I never drink wine. Bela Lugosi immortalized as the immortal, blood-sucking Count Dracula. In 1931, born October 20th, so just a couple days ago, depending on whenever I get this uploaded, several days ago. 1882 is the year he was born, same year that Etienne Jules Murray did the multiple sequential photographs with a single camera, which was somewhat groundbreaking at the time. Anyway, 1882, October 20th, Bela Ferenc Deszko Blazko is born to parents, Hungarian banker István Blazko and Serbian-born Paula de Vojnik. I'm gonna try my darndest to say all of these correctly. He was born in Lugos, Hungary, near the home of the legendary Count in the Carpathian Mountains. Bela was the youngest of 4 children. He had 2 older brothers, Laszlo and Lajos, and 1 sister, Vilma. Okay, my face is primed. Here we go. Young Bela discovered his love of acting at an early age and vastly preferred it to schoolwork. His father passed away when he was 12, to the best of my knowledge, what I could find, and at that point he dropped out of school. Some accounts are that he dropped out of school to pursue his acting career and greatly disappointed his father, but other accounts say that his father passed away and he dropped out of school so that he could get a job and help support the family. Which I kind of find interesting since he was the youngest. Like, wouldn't the older brothers, I don't know the age gaps, maybe they were out of the home. I still feel like it would have been the normal thing to do for them to take over supporting their mother. I don't know the story there, but supposedly if it was that he went to work instead of pursue his acting career, that he went into the mines and also at times worked on the railroad. And then around when he turned 18, the story is most likely that he gained a position with a traveling theater troupe with the help of his sister, who apparently convinced her husband to help him get that spot. I have some reference photos for what I'm planning to do with my face, because I've never done it before, and I'm probably going to mess it up. We're going to see. So, Bela is an adult. He, ooh, hello computer, manages to get on the stage. In 1911, so he would have been a few years older, he moved to Budapest, continued working on the stage in whatever roles he could find, and improved his craft by trial and error. Some accounts say mostly error. But he did improve enough that he was allowed to join the National Theatre of Budapest, so that was kind of a big deal, and at least according to himself, was lauded for his versatility. We're going big with the eyeliner. So 1913, he joins the National Theatre of Budapest, gets some better roles, maybe not spectacular roles. There's not really any way to tell, I don't think. Terrible. And then World War I breaks out, and he leaves the theater to join the Hungarian army and is sent to the Russian front as part of the 43rd Division of the Ski Patrol. I don't know what that is. He rises to the rank of lieutenant and at some point is wounded on the Russian front. It doesn't actually say where, but based on later events, I'm going to assume in the hip or back area region of his body. I don't know if he was injured enough that he had to be discharged before the war ended. I don't believe so. I think he finished out the war. So he finishes out the war, goes home from the Russian front, and Hungary is embroiled in political unrest at this time, and the Hungarian Revolution breaks out. Have you heard of it? The Hungarian Revolution? It was a thing. So, a big thing. Bela goes from World War I, the Russian front, straight into the Hungarian Revolution. He joins the revolution, sort of on behalf of the Actors Union, apparently. And the revolution kind of wraps up, is kind of unsuccessful. And as he was on the revolutionaries' side and they didn't win, he was banned from acting, so he couldn't work, and essentially exiled either by the government or exiled himself because he couldn't do what he wanted to do and act, to Vienna. And then he didn't stay in Vienna hardly at all, I don't think, and moved to Germany from there. So this was like 1919, he goes to Vienna and then Germany. Before he left Hungary, he appeared on the Hungarian stage a total of 172 times, so not bad. He also appeared in Hungarian films between 1917 and 1919 under the name Aristid Olt, O-L-T. And in Germany, he appeared in several more films, including the 1920 film Die Todeskaravan, which means Caravan of Death. I did not pronounce that completely correctly, but I did the best I could. Also in that film was a German Jewish woman named Dora Gerson. She had been a cabaret singer in the 20s and 30s. She started recording songs in Yiddish, and she was being persecuted. Her family fled to the Netherlands, and then they were caught trying to cross a border into Switzerland, and they were sent to Auschwitz, where she and her husband and 2 children were killed, I believe in 1943. I just wanted to mention her, a little memorial of her as she relates to Bela Lugosi, because they appeared in that film together. So back to Bela. He was still, this is 1920, he's still not feeling terribly safe, and he decides to book safe passage on a merchant ship that was headed for the United States, and he bargained for this by offering his services as a crewman. So they land in New Orleans around late 1920. I'm trying to make a bat wing. This is ridiculous. So Bela lands in New Orleans. That's where the ship docks, and he traveled from there to Ellis Island in order to be processed and gain lawful entry into the United States. And I don't know exactly the timeline of how long it took him to get from New Orleans to Ellis Island, and then how long he was at Ellis Island, but he entered the United States from Ellis Island in 1921. He started out in New York, trying to get stage work there and working as a laborer. Because he didn't speak English yet, he was kind of struggling, so he formed a stock company of fellow Hungarian expatriates, touring the East Coast and playing to immigrant audiences, slowly learning the English language. His breakout English-speaking role came in 1922 in The Red Poppy. He learned all his lines phonetically, which fooled the critics and earned him rave reviews. Alright. Bela played classic roles for several more years, on stage of course, before landing the lead in the stage adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1927. The show ran for 33 weeks on Broadway before touring for 2 years, and after its run on the West Coast, Bela decided to stay in California. His breakout in American cinema, his breakout role, came in 1929 in an inauspicious, stuffy murder mystery, The 13th Chair, playing a somewhat ham-handed detective. The film was directed by a Todd Browning, who would direct Lugosi again just 2 years later in a role that would maybe have gone to the man of 1,000 faces, Lon Chaney, had he not died tragically of complications from throat cancer at the age of 47 in August 1930. That fateful role was one Lugosi had been campaigning to get, one he had played and developed and perfected. Count Dracula. The film Dracula opened at the Roxy Theater in New York on February 12, 1931. Lugosi's performance as the imposing, sophisticated servant of darkness was so distinct and unforgettable that it was quickly etched into the collective social consciousness as the definitive personification of Bram Stoker's monster. 2 years later, Bela was billed in the film Night of Terror as Bela Dracula Lugosi. Unfortunately, Lugosi dreaded being typecast in the horror genre, but he could not escape his image. And his heavy accent did not help his ability to branch out into other genres. He was teamed with other horror movie great Boris Karloff, and the two were the quintessential movie monsters of America, trading off playing Frankenstein, depending on the project. They appeared together in 8 films and were rumored to have been either bitter rivals or best friends. The most likely version of events is that they had a friendly working relationship, but were not necessarily close offset. The films in which they appeared together were The Black Cat of 1934, not to be confused with The Black Cat of 1941. The 1941 film by the same name had a completely different plot. Lugosi was in it, Karloff was not. The next film that they were in together was The Gift of Gab, a comedy in which they really only had cameo appearances, and that was in 1934 as well. The Raven, the adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's book in 1935, The Invisible Ray in 1936, Son of Frankenstein in 1939. I believe in that one, Karloff played Frankenstein's monster. In Black Friday, they appeared together as well in 1940, The Body Snatcher in 1945, and finally, Suspense in 1949. Fun fact for any of you budding horror buffs out there, Bela appeared in several films in 1932, the year after Dracula came out, and one of which was the first ever zombie film. The first. Aptly named. It was released 2 years, 1932, before the Hays Office came to be, which was the Hollywood censorship board, basically. And at the time, it was a pretty shocking film. The reels were lost for about 80 years before they were found again and restored, and it is available on DVD and also on Prime and other affiliated streaming apps. Another fun fact, Bela Lugosi never wore fangs as Dracula. He did play vampires in other films, not Dracula himself, and I believe in several of them he did wear fangs, but never as Dracula, like that specific character. Not much is said about all of Bela's marriages, but his first marriage was back in Hungary in 1917 to a woman named Ilona Schmick. Their marriage ended in 1920 when he fled to the United States, purportedly because Ilona did not wish to join him. She didn't want to leave the country, she still had family over there, she did not want to leave, so she divorced him. It's possible also that he had had an affair. I don't think she followed him right away to Germany, or she went back home to Hungary at some point after they moved there, and in that time frame he possibly had an affair, and I don't remember that woman's name. So 1920 rolls around, he leaves Germany, and his wife divorced him. So he gets to the United States. In 1921, he marries a woman also named Ilona, but her last name was von Montag. And he may have known her in either Hungary or Berlin, as she was also an actor. Interesting. They had kind of bizarre and possessive relationship, at least on his side. There's a lot of like gossip column type stuff going on with them. And he supposedly stole her dog at some point and all kinds of weird stuff to like get her back because she left him or something. I don't know. She claimed for some reason to have been a countess. There's zero evidence of that. She just wanted to make herself look cool, I guess. So that's why there was a von in her name. That was kind of an aristocratic thing. And she added that herself. But they divorced in 1924. Sometime in the mid to late 20s, it was rumored that Lugosi had yet another affair, this time with Clara Bow, who was super famous at that time. Way more famous than he was in the 1920s. This is before Dracula came out. The truth of that, I'm not sure of. It was kind of all over in the papers, I think, that he was having this affair with Clara Bow. I don't know. I don't know if it was true. There was a lot of stuff that would go around in papers that wasn't necessarily true. But he supposedly had an affair with Clara Bow in the mid-20s, and this apparently caused a rift between him and his next wife, whom he married in 1929, Beatrice Woodruff Weeks. Their marriage lasted 3 days. So, yeah. After the release of Dracula, Bela was finally a naturalized citizen on June 26th of 1931. And then in 1933, he marries Lillian Arch. They would stay married for 20 years. They had a son together, Bela's only child, on January 5th, 1938. They named him Bela George Lugosi Jr. Cute. So he married Lillian in 1933, and also in 1933, the Screen Actors Guild is founded, and Bela was the 28th founding member of the labor union, which had been formed to combat the exploitive multi-year contracts of the major studios. Bela never drove a car or flew in an airplane. He loved to smoke cigars. His wife Lillian was his chauffeur, and on sets she would puff his cigars to keep them lit so that he could smoke between takes without wasting a single cigar. When he needed to travel long distances, he took the train or a ship, if going overseas. He remained attached to his culture, and he loved Hungarian food and music. He also followed a Hungarian soccer team that was based in LA. He loved dogs. He had a white German Shepherd at some point, and I think some Dobermans, and he just loved dogs. Big dogs, generally. I'm not bothering with bronzer because I'm supposed to look undead. Anyway, Bela's favorite actor was Marlon Brando. Next to himself, probably. Just like he had feared, he was cast almost exclusively in horror films for his entire career. For Disney's Fantasia in 1940, he performed the live-action reference material for the demon Chernabog in the scene Night on Bald Mountain. I did cheekbones. I thought I was recording and was not. Cheekbone! Sometime in the early 40s, Bela began suffering from severe and chronic sciatica, due most likely to the injuries he sustained on the Russian front in World War I. The pain was severe and benign treatments did pretty much nothing to alleviate it, so he went to doctors and they prescribed him morphine. And then in 1947, when methadone became available in the United States, he switched to that. Sadly, he became dependent on them, and this was pretty widely known, so his career suffered as a result. In the early 50s, a fan and financially challenged filmmaker, Ed Wood, found Lugosi and offered him roles in his films. In 1953, Lugosi was the narrator in Glenn and Glenda, considered to be one of the worst films ever made, despite its bravery in tackling a certain taboo topic. Bela then had a Frankenstein-esque role in Bride of the Monster in 1955 and posthumously in Plan 9 from Outer Space in 1957, with footage taken in 1955 when he had gotten out of the hospital after a self-imposed stay seeking help for his substance abuse. So with these films, Ed championed his hero the best he could. Lugosi's final film that he actually actively participated in making, not the 1957 one, was also in 1955 for director Reginald Laborg. It was called The Black Sleep. To his disappointment, he had no lines as he played a mute. Also in 1955, he married a Hope Lininger 2 years after Lillian had divorced him, apparently due to his jealousy over her taking a job as a full-time assistant for another man, whom she married 13 years later. So, I don't know if his jealousy was warranted. 13 years is a long time to work for somebody before marrying them. But because he was so jealous, Lillian divorced him, and he remarried 2 years later to Hope. On August 19th, 1956, he passed away of a heart attack in his sleep at the age of 73. His wife Hope discovered him when she arrived home from work. Lugosi's son and previous wife Lillian made the decision to have him buried in one of his Dracula cloaks, believing it is what he would have wanted. I really don't know that he would have wanted to have been buried in one of his cloaks. The part of Dracula haunted him, no pun intended. His entire life, it followed him. He played Dracula or other vampires numerous times. He was in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It gave him work in some ways, but it also prevented him from getting so many other parts because from that moment on, he was typecast in horror. Almost every single role was horror, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with being in horror movies, but he wanted more. Supposedly, in his own language, he had had more versatility, and it wasn't a barrier for him, obviously, to be speaking Hungarian or having a Hungarian accent in Hungarian plays. But it was a barrier to him in the United States because immigrants were not necessarily getting the best parts. And he played Dracula, and he had wanted to play Dracula, but it ended up kind of cursing him. It was rumored as well that Frank Sinatra had paid some of the funeral expenses, or just completely for the funeral, taking care of it. That's not the case. Lillian and Hope, his two final wives, took care of the funeral expenses. I think his son Bela as well. It is true, however, that Frank Sinatra had contributed to some degree to Bela's rehab expenses in 1955, which amazed him because they had never met. Bela's son, Bela Lugosi Jr., went on to affect the film industry on his father's behalf as an attorney. In 1966, he filed suit against Universal Studios for violating his father's personality rights without permission of his heirs. Now, personality rights are a celebrity's rights over their own name, image, likenesses, and any other kind of marketable fame. So basically any way that a celebrity can make money off of themselves. So this raised the question, do a celebrity's personality rights extend after their death? The trial judge in the lawsuit ruled in favor of Lugosi's family, awarded them $70,000 from Universal, and barred Universal from merchandising Lugosi's likeness. Universal appealed, however, and the California Supreme Court reversed the decision in 1979, ruling that personality rights do not extend beyond the grave. Oh boy. I'm sorry. However, in 1985, the Celebrities' Rights Act of California superseded the previous decisions granting statutory after-death rights to the celebrity's estate under specific conditions. Goods and products merchandising their name or image are prohibited without explicit permission from the estate, but references to the person within another art form, article, fictional or non-fictional entertainment would be allowable. Whew. That is basically the entire story of Bela Lugosi. I mean, not really. Obviously, there's so much more. His son has said that his father, that Bela, they're both Bela, Bela Jr. Has said that Bela Sr. was an avid reader. He would read on all sorts of topics. He was self-taught. Obviously, he had dropped out of school at a very young age, but he read about everything. He was involved in a lot of things. Very smart man, interesting man, and very intimidating man. And his encouragement to his son to be a constant student is what led him to be an attorney. And his son is still alive. I think he's the only person featured in this entire story that is still alive. He was born in 1938, so he is 83. That is the story of Dracula. Okay, anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this patheticness. I think it turned out okay, really. But I was just after this debacle, I was not going to attempt it over here. So we just went with two-sided face for spoopy season. Whatever. I don't really celebrate Halloween. Y'all know that if you watch my videos last year. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful spoopy season, and hey, check out some old horror movies. I kind of want to check out that White Zombie from 1932, if I can get a hold of it somehow. It honestly looks amazing. I'm not a big horror movie person. I can't handle anything too scary, because I'm a wuss. But if you can handle it, that's wonderful for you. And my battery's gonna die really soon here. And now, I'll leave you. Come on, world, there's a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy. This isn't what I was planning on doing either. Oh well, it's gonna have to do. What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm all over the place. Okay, my brain isn't functioning. That's what's happening right now, is zero brain function. This is a mess. Terrible. Bela never drew a drew. We're just doing stuff. It's okay. It's gonna look like garbage, but we're doing it.